Hi everyone! Today I am putting together leftover Stamp Camp cards. And this is another card that we did at Stamp Camp. We always make 5 projects, and this was one of them. And I thought it was lovely. The second I saw the Dandelion Wishes stamp set in the catalog, I knew I wanted to do an emboss resist technique with it. I just love these little floating away dandelions. Although I don't like them in my yard, I do like them as a pretty little art object. So the Dandelion Wishes stamp set, it reminded me of one we had a long time ago, and I remember doing an emboss technique with that, and so it just instantly said, oh, I remember that card. I really wanted to do it again. So I thought I would do that at a stamp camp, and it was a lot of fun, and I think it was easier. A lot of times it's hard to do a watercolor card at a stamp camp. Some people are afraid, but this is just a wash, and I think it's quite simple. So we're going to use this fun dandelion and the Sending Wishes Your Way. Now I used watercolor paper for this card, and I cut this at 3, no, this is at 5, and this is at 3 3/4, and then I layered a piece of basic black behind it, so that's at 4 by 5 1/4, and then I've got a blueberry bushel cardstock base, and it's just a sheet of 8.5 by 11 cardstock cut in half, and then I forgot to score it. I'm going to score it down the center, and that'll be our card. But right now we're just going to start with our fun little dandelion image. So the first thing I stamped on is I wanted to use a color, I wanted to use black so it would show up. You don't always have to put down a black, but I thought I would for this particular card. I think it shows up quite nicely, although I have done it with no color on the dandelion, so you just get white. And this is Brusho. If you've not tried Brusho yet, it's a little powder watercolor, so you either get your paper wet and then sprinkle the powders on, or sprinkle the powders on and then spray it, and they kind of bleed into this nice background. So here is the same kind of idea, but with no black added, and then this one has black and the clear emboss, so you can try it either way you like. I think I liked this one just a little bit better for some reason, so that's what we did at Stamp Camp. Okay, so you're going to first stamp with StazOn ink because it can hold up to the watercolor. There you go. Then you're going to clean this really good because you don't want your StazOn ink to get in your Versamark pad. Next you're going to stamp again in Versamark. Now you want this to be offset slightly, and you can do this in different ways. You can worry about it and get a Stamp-A-Majig and line it up perfectly, but let me tell you, if you tried, you probably could not stamp directly on top of this image. You're going to get close, but you're not going to get directly on top. So I don't even think you need to use a Stamparatus or a Stamp-A-Majig on this one. You just need to try to line it up, and it'll be close, and that'll be good for what we're doing. So I'm going to try to line it up, and then I'm going to go ahead and shake a clear embossing powder on top. Okay, we're done with all the inking. So now you're going to take your aqua painter, and you're going to choose a couple different colors. I am going to use Coastal Cabana just because I haven't used it in a very long time, and Blueberry Bushel to match my background. Now in the past you used to be able to squeeze the ink pad, which would then give you some ink in the bottom of your lid, and then you could paint straight from that. And these new pads are designed without a lot of give. It's a good thing that doesn't have a lot of give, because the old style pads, sometimes at a stamp camp, the lid would come detached from the base, and then customers would hand it to me and I would have to put them back together and end up with inky fingers. And that happened not all the time, but it happened occasionally. And so when they design the new pads, they are more rigid and you don't have that good squeeze. You could probably do it, but I just don't want to squeeze too hard. So what I have come up with is a way to get some ink in the pad. Is you can either just use some re-inkers and drop some ink in there, or I like to make myself a little palette with these tiny little blocks, and you can use whatever you might have. Like maybe you have a little plastic something or other, some little doodad. I meant to do that in 2 different colors. That's what happens when you talk and do things at the same time. So you make yourself a little palette with these little blocks or some other little plastic thing you might have laying around, and then you can just clean them off when you're done. Maybe the lid for some canister or whatever. Now also what I've done is I have taken it and just placed it in the middle of my pad like so. And that works too. So whatever you decide to do, it's better than squeezing the pad, because you don't want to ruin your beautiful new ink pads. Okay, so for this technique you want to use a pretty wet area. So I kind of give it a good wet down here, nice and loose, and then I'm going to use my lighter color and put it down. And you can see it's not sticking where that clear embossing powder lays. So I'm going to get a nice wash across the back. And then I'm going to go with my darker color, which is the Blueberry Bushel, and I'm going to bring that in as well. I'm kind of letting it get lighter as it goes off to the side. Okay, now while it's still wet, it's a great idea, or fun idea, I don't know if it's great, to touch the little tufts. Just touch the tufts. And then they're going to get a little highlight, and they're going to have this little kind of flowing look to them. And the watercolor bleeds. If you feel like it's a little too dark, you can go in and take some off. With a, I think it's okay, with a little napkin or something, but you can add a little bit of water. I think that one's a little dark. So kind of go in and touch the little tufts of dandelion. And that is a fun look. There, very soft and pretty. Now also I did a little bit of watercoloring onto my background of the sentiment. So I stamped it on watercolor paper as well with StazOn, and I'm going to punch it out. And I'm kind of going to do the same thing. I'm going to go with my lighter color and just kind of wash around the whole thing. And I didn't want to use a lot of dark color on top of it because I wanted you to be able to read the sentiment. So while it's still wet, I just touched it with the dark in kind of places, just so it's got the little dark color, but I kind of avoided the words. There. So it comes together pretty fast. It's almost dry. Let me clean this. I wanted to add a little inside to the card. This is a very dark cardstock, so it's hard to write a greeting or a message. So I added a piece of Whisper White to the inside, and I just thought it would be fun to add a couple little tufts of the dandelions, kind of going up the side. This would be fun to decorate on your envelopes as well. Now normally you don't watercolor on Whisper White cardstock. It just doesn't hold up super well. But if you just are doing a tiny little bit like I am, you can just quickly add a little bit of color just for fun, like around the little tufts, and it'll be okay. Alright, so let's put it all together. I'm going to layer my background onto basic black. Okay, and then I'm going to layer that onto a base of Blueberry Bushel. Okay, and then I'm going to put this right on the top. Now I want it to really stand out, so I'm going to add some ribbon behind it in the Blueberry Bushel. And how I did that is I added adhesive in a little glob. And I wanted to have this little fun bit of ribbon behind, so I just kind of snaked it a little bit, making sure before I cut it that that's enough. And then I thought, because dandelions are so kind of fluffy and light, that this little tiny silver thread is just really pretty. So I went around my fingers maybe 3 or 4 times, maybe 5 or 6. And then I just put it down, making sure to get it in that adhesive glob. And if I had a little straight end coming out, I kind of don't like those, so I brought it around, tucked it inside, and then top that all off with some dimensionals to hold it all in place. There. Each one different from the next with watercolor. Really pretty. I think it's a really nice effect with the dandelion puffs. So check out the Dandelion Wishes stamp set. It's really fun for lots of techniques, and it's really great with Brusho if you want to play with Brusho. And let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. Bye.